On my wedding day, I overheard my fiancée laughing about running away with her ex. I stayed silent. An hour later, her fantasy walked in, and her perfect wedding turned into a public nightmare. Hey, dear viewers, if you enjoyed the video, you can like it and subscribe to the channel. The laugh is what did it. Not the words at first, not even the name. It was the laugh. Light, careless, the kind you hear when someone feels completely safe saying exactly what they mean. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was just walking down the hallway outside the bridal suite, looking for my best man, trying to shake off that tight feeling in my chest that had been sitting there all morning. Wedding nerves, I told myself. Normal stuff. The door wasn't fully closed, just cracked enough. Voices spilled out like they weren't worried about who might be listening. Music was playing softly inside, something pop and upbeat, mixed with the hiss of hairspray and the clink of glasses. I slowed without meaning to. I don't know why. Something in my body told me to stop. You're seriously not nervous at all? One of the bridesmaids said. I recognized Sarah's voice immediately. She'd been Megan's best friend since college. Then Megan laughed. That laugh. Please, she said. The only thing that would make me nervous is if Kyle showed up. More giggles. My name wasn't mentioned. Not even once. I stood there, my hand still wrapped around my phone, my jacket draped over my arm, suddenly feeling like I'd stepped outside of time. Kyle. The name hit me, but it didn't surprise me. Not really. He'd been a shadow in our relationship for longer than I wanted to admit. An ex, she insisted, didn't matter. A memory she claimed was dead. A story she told so often, it never really went away. Then she said it. The sentence that split everything clean in half. Can you imagine, though? Megan continued, her voice dreamy, almost playful. Like, what if he just barged in right before I said, I do, and took me away? Like in the movies. The room erupted in laughter. Oh my God, Sarah said, squealing. You'd totally leave with him, wouldn't you? There was a pause, a tiny one, just long enough to matter. Then Megan sighed, soft, honest, in a heartbeat. Something inside me went quiet. No rush of anger, no surge of panic, just a clean, cold stillness, like the moment after you realize the pain you were bracing for already happened. The worst part wasn't the fantasy. It wasn't even Kyle. It was the ease with which she said it. Like this wasn't a joke. Like it was something she'd rehearsed in her head 100 times. I didn't step into the room. I didn't interrupt. I didn't make a sound. I turned around and walked back to my suite, every step steady, controlled, my reflection in the glass hallway mirrors, looking calm enough to fool anyone. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and in a twisted way, it was. Because it was the day everything finally made sense. My name is Ethan. I was 35 years old that day. Megan was 29. We'd been together 3 years, engaged for 1. On paper, we were perfect. I had a solid job, owned the house we lived in, paid the bills without stress. I wasn't flashy, but I was dependable. I gave her the life she said she wanted, stability, comfort, a future. But for the last year, something had been off. Subtle at first. A name dropped too casually. Comparisons disguised as jokes. Kyle loved this song. Kyle and I used to come here. Little things. Easy to dismiss if you didn't want to see them. I tried talking to her about it once, carefully, like you do when you don't want to sound insecure. She laughed it off, told me I was being paranoid, said Kyle was ancient history. Her words said one thing, her eyes said another. 6 months before the wedding, I sat her down. No yelling, no drama, just honesty. I told her I needed to know she was fully here, fully committed, that I wasn't going to marry someone who was still emotionally living in another chapter of her life. She cried, promised, swore she loved me, said I was the only one she wanted. For a while, she even stopped bringing him up. I let myself believe we'd turned a corner. Standing alone in my suite on my wedding day, tie still straight, jacket still pressed, I finally understood the truth. She wasn't marrying me because she chose me. She was marrying me because I was safe, predictable, settled. And suddenly the plan formed, not out of rage, not out of revenge, but clarity. She wanted a movie moment. Fine, I would give her one. When my brother Liam walked into the suite, he took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. He didn't ask stupid questions. He never did. "You look like you just heard something you can't unhear," he said. "I did," I replied, and I told him everything, word for word. He didn't interrupt, just listened, jaw tightening. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "So, what are you doing?" he asked. "Calling it off?" "Oh, I'm calling it off," I said, but not quietly. I asked him for Kyle's number. That was the moment things shifted from pain to precision. Liam hesitated for half a second, then nodded. He knew someone who knew someone. 5 minutes later, the number was on his phone. I went out to my car and pulled a burner phone from the glove compartment. I'd bought it months earlier for emergencies. I didn't know then that this would be the real one. I crafted the message carefully. It had to sound desperate, believable, emotional. I sent it, turned the phone to silent, and slipped it into my pocket. Then I went back inside. The music swelled. Guests took their seats. The garden looked beautiful, expensive, perfect. I stood at the altar calm, watching Megan walk toward me, radiant in white, smiling at a future she didn't know was already gone. And then the footsteps started behind us. Her face changed first. Not confusion, not anger, excitement. Kyle walked up the aisle, jeans, t-shirt, completely out of place. Exactly like the movie she'd imagined. The fantasy she'd confessed an hour earlier. The moment our eyes met, she knew. And when I took the microphone, smiling, steady, ready to finish the story she'd started, her face went pale. Her face drained of color so fast it was almost unsettling. 1 second earlier, there had been something close to excitement in her eyes. The next, it was gone, replaced by a panic she couldn't hide, no matter how hard she tried. Kyle stood there awkwardly, shifting his weight, clearly realizing he'd walked into something much bigger than he expected. Guests whispered. Phones came out. Megan's father half stood from his seat, frozen between rage and disbelief. Kyle broke the silence first. "Megan, Sarah texted me. She said you needed me, that you didn't want to do this." His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. Megan didn't answer. She looked at me instead, not pleading, not apologetic, calculating. Like she was trying to figure out how to turn this back into a story where she still came out on top. I took the microphone from the officiant's hand before anyone could stop me. My pulse was steady. My hands didn't shake. I remember thinking how strange that was, how calm I felt. "It's okay," I said, my voice carrying easily across the garden. "Everyone just relax. There's no danger here. I can explain." I turned slightly toward Kyle. He looked relieved that someone seemed in control. "Kyle, thanks for coming," I said. "Your timing is actually perfect." A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. "You see," I continued, "about an hour ago, I overheard my fiancée laughing with her friends. She told them that her ultimate fantasy was for you to burst into our wedding and take her away, like in the movies." I paused just long enough for the words to sink in. I'm a romantic. I believe in honoring people's dreams. Sarah let out a small sound behind Megan, something between a gasp and a sob. "So, I sent you that message," I said calmly. "I figured if this was what she truly wanted, who was I to stand in the way?" Megan finally found her voice. "Ethan, this isn't funny." "I'm not joking," I replied. "I'm being honest." For once, I looked back at Kyle. She's all yours. If this is the love story she's been waiting for, I didn't want to deprive her of it. Kyle's expression shifted. Confusion turned into embarrassment, then into something like anger. He looked at Megan, waiting for her to move, to say something that would make sense of why he'd dropped everything and driven across town. She didn't. The silence stretched. Long, uncomfortable. Behind me, Megan's mother started crying. Her father's face went red. Someone muttered my name under their breath, but I wasn't looking at them. I was watching Megan realize, piece by piece, that this wasn't a fantasy scene anymore. There was no swelling music, no slow motion run into someone's arms. Just reality, and everyone watching. Kyle took a step back, then another. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I thought, never mind." He turned and walked away without another word, disappearing back down the aisle he'd just marched up so confidently. That was the moment it broke her. Megan's shoulders sagged. Her mouth opened like she wanted to scream, but nothing came out. The fantasy hero had abandoned the set. The audience was still there, and she was left standing alone in a wedding dress she no longer had a role for. I turned back to the crowd. "I'm sorry to disappoint everyone," I said. "There won't be a wedding today, but the bar is open. The band is paid. The food's already here. So please, eat, drink, and enjoy the afternoon." Then I set the microphone down and walked away. I didn't look back at her. Not once. The next few hours felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. People came up to me constantly. Some hugged me. Some shook my hand. A few just stared in awe. The band switched from wedding ballads to upbeat rock. Someone started chanting my name as a joke. It stuck. Laughter replaced the tension. My wedding turned into a celebration of escape. Megan and her family disappeared into a side room. The yelling was loud enough that staff had to close the doors. Guests whispered about what they heard. The story spread faster than I could have imagined. By the end of the night, everyone knew some version of it. I stood at the bar with a whiskey in my hand, watching the woman I almost married unravel behind closed doors, and I felt free. The next morning, my phone exploded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. Megan swung between apologies and threats. Her father promised lawsuits. Her mother begged me to reconsider. I didn't respond to any of it. I let my lawyer handle everything. The contracts were in my name. The deposits were non-refundable. When Megan's father threatened to sue for humiliation, my lawyer sent one letter back. It included a bill for her half of the expenses I'd covered and a polite note explaining that any legal action would involve subpoenas for every bridesmaid present during the conversation I overheard. The threats stopped immediately. The fallout didn't. Within a week, Megan's name became a punchline in our social circle. Friends distanced themselves. Invitations dried up. The bridesmaids who'd laughed with her on wedding day quietly unfollowed her online. Kyle's girlfriend found out why he'd disappeared that afternoon. She ended things publicly, loudly. About a week later, Megan showed up at my house. She looked smaller, tired, like someone who'd lost the audience she thought she needed to survive. "I made a mistake," she said, standing at the edge of my driveway. "It was just a fantasy, a joke." "No," I replied. "It was a truth you didn't think I'd hear." She cried. She blamed me. She begged. I listened for exactly 30 seconds before I walked back inside. That was the last conversation we ever had. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized without a fight. She signed everything. Her parents mailed a check for the amount my lawyer invoiced. No note, no apology. I sold the house, bought a smaller place, started over quietly. The money I spent on that wedding, I don't consider it a loss. It was the price of clarity, of freedom, of not building a life with someone who would have always been waiting for another man to show up and take her away. The ultimate revenge wasn't the spectacle. It wasn't the crowd. It wasn't the humiliation. It was believing her when she showed me who she really was, and walking away without looking back. The strange thing about walking away from chaos is how quiet life becomes afterward. For weeks, it felt like my nervous system didn't know what to do with the silence. No texts blowing up my phone, no arguments looping in my head, no constant low-grade anxiety about whether I was enough. Just quiet mornings and long evenings where I could finally hear myself think. I took time off work, not because I was falling apart, but because I didn't want to rush into filling the space Megan had occupied for years. I started going on long walks in the mornings, usually without my phone. I'd sit on a park bench with coffee and watch people live their lives, realizing how close I'd come to building one with someone who was never fully present. Friends filled in the gaps without being asked. Liam came by most weekends. My parents stopped checking on me with worried voices and started talking to me like they always had, like they trusted me again. That meant more than I expected. Every now and then, someone would bring up the wedding, ask if I regretted how I handled it, ask if I'd do it differently. The answer was always the same. No, because the truth is, if I'd ignored what I heard that day, I would have paid for it later. In years, in lawyers' offices, in quiet resentment, in wondering why my wife kept checking her phone whenever an old name popped up. I didn't ruin my wedding day. I saved the rest of my life. Megan faded out of my world faster than I thought possible. Mutual friends stopped mentioning her. Social media did the rest. When her name did come up, it was usually followed by a pause, then a shake of the head. People didn't need me to explain. They'd seen enough. Kyle disappeared too. Last I heard, he'd moved cities. New job. New relationship. Same pattern, probably. I didn't care. He was never the villain in my story. He was just the mirror that showed me the truth. About 3 months after everything, I started dating again. Slowly. Quietly. No grand gestures. No promises made too early. I met someone who didn't need to be rescued from her past or validated by attention. Someone who laughed without checking to see who was watching. Someone who asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. The difference was immediate, peaceful, grounded. One night, she asked me why my last engagement ended. I told her the short version, not the spectacle, not the details, just the truth. That I realized too late that I was loving someone who was still in love with a fantasy. She nodded once and said, "I'm glad you chose yourself." So am I. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that moment at the altar. The look on Megan's face when reality finally caught up with her imagination. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just clarity. The kind you don't forget. She wanted a movie moment. She got one. Just not the ending she expected. As for me, I didn't win because people clapped. I didn't win because she was embarrassed. I won because I walked away before I lost myself. And that's an ending I'll choose every time.